In the meantime, I've been trying to find decent data on a notion of self-sovereignty that doesn't involve having a territory. So that's another oddball and eccentric solution to finding a jurisdiction, is becoming self-sovereign.
Does that include something like Aragon?
Aragon is an example of an experiment in that direction. It's really astounding, though, that the only notion of state, of self-sovereign state, has to involve a territory. So there's no such thing as a notion of state that isn't tied to a piece of land.
How about a satellite in orbit?
Yeah, it's not included in the definition. So I guess if there was a colony on Mars, that would be excluded from the traditional notions of self-sovereignty.
I wonder if maritime laws might be more applicable here.
It's an interesting question. I don't know. I'll take a look. But probably we've given people enough time to join in, and so let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, we've made another release. I think it's 9.22, and that fixes the bug that we found when we were launching mainnet, that is related to. So Tomislav found the issue. The issue is that we were having multiple threads hitting LMDB. And even though it's supposed to support multiple threads under certain situations, this was causing it to throw an exception. So we sequentialized that, or Tomislav sequentialized that, and we no longer see that bug or other mysterious bugs that had cropped up every once in a while. So with that, I want to point out just sort of the broader implications. Currently, the network is nowhere near its performance potential, and that's because we currently only have single parents, and that's because merging, at least the way we were doing it, is taking much, much longer than single parent. So we have another strategy, which is the tri-merge. So we will implement that in the not too distant future, and hopefully that gets the cost of merging down below what it costs to have a single parent. As soon as we can have multiple parents, then we can, again, the network won't be nearly so throttled. The other issue that we're facing, and people have seen this, is that there's something wrong with the way the threads are being scheduled, because we don't see anything like linear speed up as we add more cores. From 4 to 8, we get more performance, but not linear. And from 8 to 16, we don't see anything like linear speed up. And what that means is the way the threads are being mapped against the actual hardware threads is inefficient. So we have to figure out why that's the case. It should scale near linearly. But what this means is that there's something funny in the threading package that we're using, or the way we're using it. One one of the two or both is preventing the near linear scale up. So we'll be tackling those as a part of the Mercury backlog, and those are sort of numero uno priority. And then right after that, the ability to mount shards will be the next thing that we go after. So let me stop there and see if there are any questions about what I said. All right. So I guess everyone understands the implications thereof. Okay. As you may be aware, the network is live. We've opened up the ports associated with being able to submit deploys. And this was after a board vote. There was vigorous discussion on this point. But the board voted ultimately to go ahead and open the ports, which means the network is live. That has certain consequences and risks for the co-op. But let me just stop there and make sure that everyone understands just sort of the import of those statements. Any questions or comments about that?
Yeah, Greg, do you want to comment on any of the risks or importance of having done that?
Yeah, so that's, I'll take care of that now then. All right, so in terms of our engagement with the DFI, this morning, the executed copy of the consent decree was signed along with the first payment, cashier's check for the first payment sent off to the DFI via priority mail. So as long as we are able to make the payment schedules, and that's an important caveat, then the matter of any issues with respect to the rock are behind us. The DFI, failed to identify the rev as a conversion, so they see it as potentially a brand new security. They're not willing to say that it is a new security, but that it may be. So Ian has raised the question whether this should be behind closed doors. So there are some closed door session aspects of this. I'm just letting people know what is a matter of record. We will we have executed or filed for an exemption, but there are potentially some things that may be of concern for the co-op, and we can talk about the details of those concerns. So there's a little bit of a gap that we may have to address, and we can talk about the gap in the closed door session. But there are some risks, even though we've filed for an exemption. So we can give a little bit more color to that in the closed door session. But so presumably the co-op is on better footing, but there are still some risks associated with it. But this is, in full, light of day, I would like to say that without a crisp, clear statement from the DFI as to what, whether or not some things are securities and what would make them securities, an argument saying why they are securities. We're operating in a regulatory environment and in a jurisdiction which seems to be without, sort of some basic principles. So we're not able to get clear guidance on where we have strayed with respect to any of the precedent or law. We sought legal advice, proposed a fairly straightforward legal argument. This argument is not actually addressed head on by the regulatory bodies. So it's very, very difficult to do business. If you follow the rules, they tell you are breaking them, and they won't tell you how you're breaking them. That's not a good place to do business. The rules have to be crisp and clear in order to be able to do business in a manner that's safe, and removes risks for the community. So so the board is now discussing what would be an appropriate jurisdiction where we could do business. And we want to involve the community in that discussion. Specifically, we would like folks to help us do the research to do the cost analysis of opening up in a different jurisdiction. Any questions or comments about what I've said?
Yeah, Greg, are there any particular requirements or desirable aspects of the new jurisdiction?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it needs to be crypto friendly, right? We can't, it's like we can't leap out of the frying pan back into the fire. So there are a number of jurisdictions that are more crypto friendly. I think we also need to contemplate such a move with respect to climate change as well. So one of our members said, look at Australia. And that makes a certain amount of sense. But it also, Australia was hit really hard this year and may be hit even harder next year. And so I think we have to start planning, with those kinds of considerations in mind.
I completely agree. And I just wanted to add one little comment about that. I read an article recently that I believe we might have discussed on one of the climate and coordination calls a while back that was talking about how flooding around the world was starting to actually sink internet infrastructure because, the wires are sinking, getting, inundated with water in some places. So that's another thing to consider is flooding that a lot of people don't think about when they think about tech companies, but that's a big risk. So I just wanted to put.
Yep, 100%. And this is in fact one of the things that what we're trying to do here is to build a resilient infrastructure, so it can be more mobile and agile in response to infrastructure that may be challenged by climate change. That's kind of the point of decentralization, or one of the major points of decentralization. And there are other concerns as well, but those are some of them. Obviously, taxation, upfront, legal hurdles, all of those things are considerations. So, for example, moving to Switzerland might make sense in some ways, but it's quite costly upfront in terms of legal compliance. So that's something that we want to think about. And then we want to compare that against the cost of doing things within the Washington state jurisdiction where the ultimate remedy would appear to be lobbying, right? So we would have to enlist the help of a lobbyist or some lobbyist, lobbyists, plural, and approach Governor Inslee and the state legislature about the realities of crypto, that crypto is not going away, and it would be better for Washington State to be able to participate in that economy rather than have promising companies run away from the jurisdiction. So that's that's kind of the lay of the land. Any questions or comments about the options in front of us?
There's some people Nick is looking into, I guess, Estonia. There's people looking into various locations. Myself and Steve, we're looking into the Bahamas. Is it worthwhile for us to investigate these at this point, or?
Yes, absolutely. We want to put sober analysis of each of the different possibilities in front of the board, and then have a good solid debate. I think it's a former member of the community mentioned San Marino. So that's a fairly small jurisdiction that's very, very crypto friendly. But we have to look at these, seriously, right? It's like we things can look great on paper, and then the reality is terrible. I know that a lot of the infrastructure in Puerto Rico is still not recovered, and what I've heard from people on the ground in Puerto Rico is that crypto has kind of lost a lot of its shine because a lot of the population is not the local population there is not particularly happy about the way crypto startups treated the local population. So, on paper, Puerto Rico might look good, but then when you look at the actual realities, it may not be quite as attractive. And again, what we have to do is to spend some time actually going over this stuff and making a good decision as a community.
So the board could just transfer the assets of RChain to some new company or new entity?
Whatever is done, there are obligations that would have to be met by the new entity. So we can talk about that in the closed door session. There are specific existing obligations that have to be addressed by whatever succeeds the RChain co-op, even if it's just RChain co-op. Whatever the continuation of RChain co-op is, it has to meet those obligations.
And the only real asset we have right now is the future value of Rev, sort of.
I wouldn't say that. I think there are lots of other assets, but maybe we can talk about that in the closed door session. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this point? All right. Ian, did you want to say anything about node monitoring or access to ports or anything like that?
I would like to direct people's questions to the mainnet channel in the developer category of our Discord.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, so we're going to need help triaging, communications that are inbound on that channel. and so that we don't get a lot of duplicates and things like that, because we have limited bandwidth dev wise, and need to make sure that whatever we're addressing is for real and not a duplicate. So, and any help there would be great. I think that's it. I think that's everything. Did I forget anything? Ian, Bill, whoever else was on the PR call?
No, I think you got it, Greg.
Awesome. All right. Well, unless there's any burning issues that we want to chat about.
I would just say that for people's convenience, I put up a page on robot.net/row-but/balance.html where they can put in their web address, and it'll get the balance off of mainnet.
I just tried it. It worked for me.
Sweet. Thanks, Jim. That's great. All right. Well, one more hurdle crossed. I wanted to mention that today is the anniversary of my father's death. He died in a post Mardi Gras car crash 3 weeks after I was born. So today is always a special day for my mother and myself.
Well, sending you best wishes today then, Greg.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Sorry to hear that.
No, I think it was, I don't know. This is just one of those things. My mother was also in the car crash, and she claims to have had an out of body experience in which she was dying, and she looked back and said, "Well, the child can't be left without any parent at all," and so she decided to come back from that experience, and spent several weeks in the hospital after the accident, and did recover, and now plans to live to be at least 108.
Well, having met your mother, I can definitely say that that sounds like her from what I know. She definitely seems like someone who's been in touch with the beyond. Definitely.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of that kind of, resilience, I really want to also, I want to acknowledge the heroic efforts of all the people who've been working essentially on a volunteer basis now for several weeks. Everyone here, but especially Tomislav and Nutzipper and Rao and Isaac Dufresne, and now we have a new member who's helping out with the operations, and that's Gurinder, and Lilia and all the board. I really, really appreciate all the effort that everyone has put into keeping the project going. It's extremely humbling, and it also gives me hope that there's something here that's more than just about money. That's what makes me feel hopeful is and inspired, is that we have a community here that wants to see things through, and make sure that we keep our commitments and keep our promises. All right. With that, I think that's it. So we can, I'll yield back the time to the community and see you on the network.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Great. Thanks.